Okay, in the last class, we have covered triggers with examples. Okay, around 3 or 4 examples we have covered. Now we will be moving on to the next part of the third unit, which is nothing but the concept of normalization. Okay, I've given a briefing about normalization in the first unit, if at all you remember. Now we will be dealing with normalization. What is normalization? What are different kinds of normalizations? And why we are going with the concept of normalization. Okay, so before we actually start the concept of normalization, we'll be going with something which is called as redundancy. Already we know that this is a problem with the file systems, which we are trying to reduce in database management systems. So we spoke about this in advantages of DBMS and disadvantages of file systems. So what do you mean by redundancy? So redundancy means repetition of data. Redundancy simply means repetition of data or having multiple copies of the same data in the database. Having multiple copies of the same data in the database. And usually when this concept of redundancy occurs is when the database you have created is not normalized. When the database you have created is not normalized, then the concept of redundancy occurs. And why we have to eliminate the concept of redundancy would be it causes certain problems. It causes certain problems. And the problems caused by redundancy are different kinds of anomalies. So different kinds of anomalies are occurring due to the concept of redundancy. What are the different kinds of anomalies is? The first one is insertion anomaly. Insertion anomaly. Then you have got deletion anomaly. The second one is deletion anomaly. And the third one is updation anomaly. So these are the three major problems that are caused by redundancy. And the other problems would be the data is inconsistent or the data might be confusing. The data is inconsistent. Okay. Now, what are these three problems? What is insertion anomaly, deletion, and updation anomaly? We will be going with a small database. So suppose there is a manufacturing company that is used to store employee details. So the manufacturing company is trying to store employee details. Okay. And the employee details has 4 attributes. The employee table in the manufacturing company has got 4 attributes. The first one is employee ID. The second one is employee name. The third one is employee address. And the fourth one, employee department. So these are the 4 things that the company is storing with respect to the employees. Now I've got some sample data for the employee database. Employee ID 1012, 123, 166, all that stuff. I've got different employee IDs and each one has got name, address, followed by the department in which the employees are working. So using this unnormalized database, I'm going to tell you what are the 3 different anomalies that we have that are occurring with respect to your redundancy. So first one is insertion anomaly. Insertion anomaly. Okay. Suppose a new employee joins the company. Suppose a new employee joins a company. So the assumption is a new employee is joining the company. Maybe I'll assume that his ID is a new employee joining the company, his ID is 201. Okay. And his name is something called Suresh. He belongs to Hyderabad. Since he is new to the company, his working department is not yet known. So he hasn't been assigned any department as of now. Okay. So try to understand 201 Suresh, Hyderabad, without a department in which to work. Now, what does the table say? That is, my employee department cannot take a null value. My employee department cannot take a null value. Okay. Now, the problem with insertion anomaly is, suppose a new employee joins a company who is under training and is currently not assigned to any department. Then we cannot insert that particular data into the table. We cannot insert that particular data into the table if at all the department value is unknown. If at all the department value is unknown, meaning I have some data to be inserted into a table, but I'm not able to insert that particular data due to non-availability of some of the columns. Then it leads to the concept of insertion anomaly. It leads to the concept of insertion anomaly. Just try to understand this. I'm just working over here. I'm removing this particular column. I'm saying 201 is an employee, Suresh, HYD, and this has to be null according to the company, because Suresh was not assigned any department. But according to the database, employee department cannot be null. So this particular insertion gives me an error saying that employee department cannot take a null value. So I am not able to insert the details of Suresh. I'm not able to insert the details of Suresh. That concept or that situation leads to the concept of insertion anomaly. And for this to be solved, what you have to do is you have to normalize the table. What is normalization? I'll be telling you in the next 5 minutes. Okay, so this is the problem with insertion anomaly. Again, I'm going back to the original state of the table. Now, next is deletion anomaly. Suppose if at a particular point of time, the company closes the department D890. So the company is planning to close the department by department ID 890. Then what we have to do is we have to delete all the rows which include the department number 890. 890. Okay. So then deleting the rows that are having employee department as 890 would also delete the information of the employee Maggie. Would also delete the information about the employee Maggie. So see over here, what is happening here is 890 needs to be removed. So whenever I want to remove a particular column value, I have to remove the complete row. I have to completely remove the row. So delete from employee where employee department is equal to D890. So this would remove also the details of Maggie, whose ID is 123, whose employee address is Agra. Okay, then what does deletion anomaly say? That if at all you wish to remove some information which leads to the removal of information which was not intended to be removed, then it leads to the concept of deletion anomaly. So you are trying to remove the information which was not intended to be removed. Then it leads to the concept of deletion anomaly. Next one is updation anomaly. Updation anomaly. Now, what does update mean? Every one of you knows. Now, see, I'm talking about employee number 101. I'm talking about employee number 101. So what I'm trying to do is, in the above table, we have 2 rows for employee Rick. Okay, so 2 rows for employee Rick. Okay, he works in 2 different departments, D001 and D002. He works for 2 departments, D001 and D002. Now see, Rick, as he belongs to 2 departments, if we want to update the address of Rick, then we have to update the same in 2 rows. Now see, whenever I say that Rick has changed his address, so what I have to do is I have to update the address in both the rows. So instead of Delhi, he moved to Hyderabad. Now what is happening here is, okay, I thought Rick is only in 1 department. So I have modified the address of Rick as Hyderabad in that particular department. Now what will happen is, whenever the employer tries to see the address of Rick, what he will find is Rick has got 2 addresses. Rick belongs to Hyderabad, Rick belongs to Delhi. So it leads to confusion. So whenever you perform updation, you see to it that the complete data with respect to the table is updated, or else it leads to the concept of inconsistent data. It leads to the concept of inconsistent data. That is with respect to your updation anomaly. If we want to update the address of Rick, then we have to update the same in 2 rows, or the data will become inconsistent. So these are the 3 problems that are caused by redundant data. These are the 3 problems that are caused by redundant data. You can clearly see here, Amma. 101, Rick, this was Delhi. I'll change that to Delhi. Okay, 101 Rick, Delhi. Again 101 Rick, Delhi. So this particular concept is called as repetition. It is repeating. And if at all, I again modify this also 101. Again, there would be a repetition. This is Delhi. Okay, what's happening? 3 rows of data in the database is same. So this leads to the concept of redundancy. Now, I want to change the address of Rick. So here I'm modifying this as Hyderabad. And here it is Delhi, here it is Delhi. So the data would be in an inconsistent state. So whenever you're trying to update, you have to see to it that all the rows with respect to Rick would be HYD. So this is the concept of your update anomaly. Update anomaly. Okay, this is updation anomaly. Is it clear, Ma? Or you have any questions in this? What is redundancy? What are the problems that are caused by redundant data? Could you please respond? Okay, fine. Now, the next concept that leads to normalization would be the concept of functional dependencies. The concept of functional dependencies. One second, Ma. Okay. Now, here we'll be talking about what I mean by a functional dependency. So, to make it simple, it is a relationship that exists when one attribute uniquely determines another attribute. So, functional dependency exist when there is a relationship that is existing, which says that one attribute can uniquely determine another attribute in a relation. Okay, see, functional dependency is a relationship that exists when one attribute uniquely identifies another attribute in a relation. Now, how I represent that would be, consider a relation capital R. Consider a relation capital R. So we blindly say, I have got a relation R in which X and Y are the attributes. So whatever the example I've taken, I'm just trying to put it into a relation format. R is a relation which is nothing but your database, you can say, with X and Y as its attribute. Then the functional dependency is represented as X implies Y. X arrow Y. So what is the meaning of this is X uniquely determines the value of Y. X uniquely determines the value of Y, or Y is dependent on X. So that is the concept of your functional dependency. X uniquely determines the Y value, or Y is dependent on X. So looking at the above table, see, I can say here clearly, employee ID determines employee name. Looking at the table, I can blindly say that employee ID determines employee name. So see, what is the name of the employee with ID 101? So 101 implies Rick. Again, I have got 101 implies Rick. If at all, I say instead of Rick, I've got something called as Suresh. Now, can you say that employee ID uniquely determines employee name? 101, once it is saying as Rick, 101, the other time it is saying as Suresh. So I cannot blindly say that employee ID is determining employee name. Okay, but if at all, for each row, I've got the same name with respect to employee ID. So I can blindly say, what is the name of the employee with employee ID 101? Okay, it is Rick. Then I say that employee ID determines employee name, or employee name is being determined by employee ID. That is the concept of your functional dependency. So whenever you're talking about different kinds of functional dependencies, you've got something called as fully functional dependency. Then you have got partial dependency, transitive functional dependency, and trivial functional dependency. One is fully functional, partially functional, transitive dependency, and trivial. Along with this, you have got non-trivial functional dependency, non-trivial functional dependency, and multi-valued functional dependency. So these are the things which you would be using in your normalization. So when you're trying to normalize a database into certain normal forms, then you're going to work with the concept of functional dependencies. You're going to work with the concept of functional dependencies. Now, what do you mean by fully functional dependency? Fully functional dependency. Just try to see the definition. See, an attribute is fully functional dependent on another attribute if it is functionally dependent on that attribute, not on any of its proper subset. So try to understand the definition and just giving you the simplest definition. An attribute is fully functional dependent on another attribute if it is functionally dependent on that attribute, not on any of its proper subset. So I'll just work with a small example over here. I'll just work with a small example over here. See, I've got a relation R with A, B, C, D as its attributes. I'm just working with a relation capital R with A, B, C, D as its attributes. Now I say that AB functionally determines C. Okay. Now, when I say that this is fully functional dependency, FFD fully functional dependency is when C is fully functionally dependent on AB, not any of the proper subset of AB. So if at all I say that A alone can determine C, then I say that C is being determined by AB is not fully functionally dependent because A alone can determine C. But if at all I do not have this particular statement, then this is the only thing which is existing. AB together can determine C. AB together can determine C. Then I say that this functional dependency is fully functional dependency. Okay. So this is about the first one. Now see here. Consider X implies Y. Then Y is not determined by any subset of X. Consider X implies Y, then Y is not determined by any subset of X. Then we say that fully functional dependency exists. Okay, I've taken the example ABC implies D. Then D cannot be determined by any of the proper subset of ABC like BC implies D or A implies D. Then only this particular dependency is fully functional dependency. I hope it's clear, ma. Next is partial functional dependency, or you can say partial dependency. Now, consider X implies Y. If Y can be determined by any proper subset of X, then we say that partial dependency exists. So if at all in this particular case, ABC implies D, I've got BC implies D or A implies D, then I can say that partial dependency exists. It's quite opposite to that of your fully functional dependency. It's quite opposite to that of your fully functional dependency. Okay. Now see here. Partial dependency. It occurs when a non-prime attribute is functionally dependent on a part of a candidate key. Okay, so if at all I assume a candidate key to be on the LHS, then if at all the RHS is dependent on part of a candidate key, then I can say that partial dependency exists. Partial dependency exists. Okay, now taking an example, ma, I've got a student project. I've got a student project database. In that, I have SID, PID, SNAME, PNAME as its attributes. And I assume that SID and PID together is forming a key. SID and PID together is forming a key. Now, SID, PID determines name of the student. SID, PID determines the project name of the student. Okay. Now see, looking at the first functional dependency, I do not require PID in order to name the student. I just require SID. So student ID determines the name of the student. Hence, I can say that partial dependency exists in the first case. Partial dependency exists in the first case. SID, PID is not necessary to determine SNAME. Rather, I can say that SNAME can be determined only by SID. It leads to the concept of partial dependency. Okay. Now, you have got transitive dependency. Transitive dependency, every one of you knows, Amma. The minimum number of attributes for a transitive dependency to exist is 3. For a transitive dependency to exist is 3. Okay. And if at all my table has got either 1 or 2 columns, then there is no concept of transitive dependency. Now, what is transitive dependency? X implies Y is one FD, Y implies Z is another FD. then 1 second ma. Okay, so X implies Y implies Z, then I can say indirectly using these two FDs, X implies Z. Then this is the concept of your transitive functional dependency. So if at all I say these kinds of FDs exist, 1 and 2, through which indirectly I can frame one more functional dependency using the existing functional dependencies, then it is the concept of transitive functional dependency. It is the concept of transitive functional dependency. Okay. Next, you have got something which is called as trivial functional dependency. The dependency of an attribute on a set of attributes is known as trivial if the set of attributes include that attribute. It's a bit confusing. Now try to understand trivial functional dependency. If X is a proper subset of Y, if X is a proper subset of Y and Y determines X, then we say trivial dependency exists. So it's like EID, I'll just EID, comma, ename determines ename. If at all a functional dependency like this exists, EID, comma, ename implies ename, then I say that trivial functional dependency exists because the RHS of the symbol is part of the LHS of the symbol. So this particular thing should be a subset of this particular thing. Then only trivial functional dependency exists. And whenever I say EID, comma, ename determines DID, department ID, then this is the concept of your non-trivial functional dependency. This is the concept of your non-trivial functional dependency. See, if a functional dependency X implies Y holds good and Y is not a subset of X, if a functional dependency X implies Y holds and Y is not a subset of X, then this is called as non-trivial functional dependency. See, STD, student, I've got SID, comma, SName. SID implies SName. SName is not a proper subset of SID. Hence, I say that this is non-trivial functional dependency. So here also, EID, comma, ename is determining the department ID. But DID is not part of EID, comma, ename. DID is not part of EID, comma, ename. Hence, I can say that this is non-trivial functional dependency. Non-trivial functional dependency. Is it clear, ma? Any questions? All of you, is it clear, or you have any questions in what is a functional dependency? What are the different kinds of functional dependencies? I'll be talking about multi-valued in the when I'm talking about the normal forms. Yes, all of you. Would you like to go through the PPTs for 2 minutes? Trivial. See, Amma, whenever I have got a functional dependency like, whenever I've got a functional dependency like A implies B. So all of us know that this is an FD. Okay, A implies B is a FD. But when this should be a trivial functional dependency is B should be subset of A. So when this is trivial is B should be subset of A. That is B should be included in A. So as an example, I've taken this. EID is employee ID is determining ename. So all of us know that this is a functional dependency because EID can uniquely identify the name of a person. So even though the names are similar for different persons, EID can determine the name. So this is an FD, but this is not a trivial functional dependency because ename is not contained in EID. Indirectly, ename is not a subset of EID. Okay, and if at all I modify this EID comma ename, EID comma ename together is determining ename, then I say that ename is part of EID comma ename, or ename is subset of EID comma ename. Then this leads to the concept of trivial functional dependency. This leads to the concept of trivial functional dependency. And if at all ename is not subset of EID and ename, then I say that it is non-trivial functional dependency. So here, instead of ename, I am putting DID. So EID comma DID would determine ename. Obviously, it will determine because EID will be determining ename. But since ename is not subset of EID comma DID, this leads to the concept of non-trivial functional dependency. Non-trivial functional dependency. I hope it's clear, ma. Surya? Any other questions, ma? For anyone? Please respond. Any problems or is it clear, ma? Okay. Now, whenever you are given with the concept of functional dependencies, then how do you find out the candidate keys is the next topic. Try to understand this. Whenever you are given with a set of functional dependencies, how do you figure out the possible candidate keys? All of you know what a candidate key is. Now what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to find out set of candidate keys. Okay. See, I've got a relation capital R with A, B, C, D, E, F as its attributes. I'm just naming the attributes by characters over here. You can name them by anything: employee, employee ID, employee name, employee address, employee age, all that stuff. I'm just taking abbreviations over here. So my table name is capital R. My attribute names are A, B, C, D, E, F. Now I'm given with set of attributes. I'm given with set of attributes. A implies C is the first one. C implies D is the second one. D implies B is the third one. And E implies F is the fourth one. I'm given with 4 set of FDs. Now find all the possible candidate keys. Now, whenever you want to find the possible set of keys, try to understand this statement. The attribute which is not present in the RHS will be present in the candidate key. The attributes which is not present in the RHS of the functional dependency will be present in the candidate key. Okay. Now try to look at this now. So I'm given with 6 attributes, A, B, C, D, E, F. Out of those 6 attributes, I've got B, C, D, and F on the RHS of the FDs. Look here, I've got B, C, D, F. I've got B, C, D, F. Or I'll just write it in the same way. C, D, B, and F are on the RHS. What are the things that are missing from the given set of attributes is A is missing, E is missing. Okay, looking at all these 6 attributes, and here I've got 2 characters that are missing. One is A, the other one is E. So I've written that over here. Now, RHS is AE. Now, once we find the RHS, we can go with the combinations of the attributes in order to find the candidate key. Now, in order to find this, first we have to find the closure. We have to find the closure of an attribute. We have to find closure of the attribute. Now, what do you mean by closure? Just try to understand over here. I'm just giving you what is closure. See, attribute closure. The set of all attributes that can be determined is called as or attribute closure. Attribute closure. Okay. The set of all attributes that can be determined by that particular attribute using the functional dependencies is called as the attribute closure of that particular attribute. And it is represented by A. At the top of A, you have to write a plus mark. So whenever you want to work with closure, at the top of A, you have to write a plus over there. Okay. So now I've got AE as the RHS. Now, how do you find the closure would be? So this way you have to represent. You can put a bracket over there also, it's up to you. AE plus. So I'm trying to find the closure of AE. That is the meaning of this. Okay, here I've written within bracket. After that, I have to put it at the top. I've put it aside it. Remember that. Okay, whenever you're working with closure, you have to put it at the top of the characters. Okay, now see, AE will it give me all the attributes that are present in the relation? I have to look at that using the functional dependencies. So if at all I will be able to determine all the attributes of the relation, then I say that AE is a candidate key. And if at all I cannot determine, then I say that AE is not a candidate key. Then I have to go with combinations. Okay, now see, I'm working with AE plus. Okay, I'm working with AE plus, finding the closure of AE plus. Now, there is a property called reflexive property, which says that anything is a subset of itself. So if at all I've got AE, I'll be able to determine AE. I hope there's nothing wrong with this. AE itself gives me AE. Okay, now, so the closure of AE plus is giving me AE. Now, A determines C. I've got here A determines C. Any problem with this? I've got an FD specifying that if at all I know the value of A, I'll be able to get the value of C. So what I can do, I can write C also over here. Now, if at all I know the value of C, I can get the value of D. I know the value of C, I can know the value of D. So I can write D also here. If at all I know D, I'll be able to find B. If at all I know D, I'll be able to find B. Now, if at all I know E, I'll be able to find F. Are all the attributes that was specified in the relation coming, ma? Yes. So see, all the attributes can be determined. So AE is a candidate key. All the attributes can be determined using AE. So AE is a candidate key. So this is the way we are finding out what a candidate key is of a given relation with a set of functional dependencies. Is it clear, ma, how you are finding out the candidate key given a relation and a set of functional dependencies? All of you? Now, go with one more example. See, now I've got relation R, A, B, C, D, E. I've got a relation R with A, B, C, D, E as its attributes. R, A, comma, B, comma, C, comma, D, comma, E. Fine. Now, with FDs, A implies B, AB implies C, BC implies E, and BD implies E. Okay, what are the attributes on the RHS is, I've got B, I've got C, I've got E. E is repeated twice, so I need not write it again. So I've got attributes BCE. BCE is the attribute. Now, so BC is the attributes that are present in the RHS. Now, what are the things that are not present in the RHS is AD. Okay, so I am finding the closure of AD. AD plus is giving me, AD will give me ADM, reflexive property, AD. Now A is giving me B. Using this particular FD, I can say A is giving me B. So here I can write B. Now AB together is giving me C. AB together is giving me C. Okay, so I can write C over here. Now BC together is giving me E. E. I've got all the attributes of the relation. Hence, I can say that AD is also a candidate key. Now, looking at over here, Amma, I can go with A, finding A closure. I'm trying to see whether A gives me A is a candidate key or not. So I'll go with this. What is A closure? A closure is A. A is giving me B. Then see, A closure is A. A, if at all I've got A, I can know the value of A. That is reflexive. A is subset of A. So we know that. Now A implies B means if at all I have got the value of A, I will be able to determine B. AB together is giving me C. Fine, C is there. Now, other thing, BC together is giving me E. Okay. Now, am I able to get the value of D anyway? So nothing is able to determine the value of D. Hence, I cannot say that A is a candidate key. Now working with B, I'll go with B. B plus. I'm just trying to find out B plus. Okay, what is the closure of B plus? B. So B gives me B. Anything apart from B, ma? A implies B, AB implies C, BC implies E, BD implies E. No. So B closure is B. Then I can go with C closure. So this way you have to work with finding out which is a candidate key. What is C? I've got only C closure as C. C cannot determine anything else. So this way. Okay. Now, try to work with this one. What are the different candidate keys for this particular relation? Just try to work on this for the next 2 or 3 minutes. I'll be giving you 2 or 3 minutes to work out on this. Please work on this. Ma, D closure is D, ma. Surya, D closure is D. Nothing else. The second question, which I have highlighted, any one of you, are you getting, ma? AD is a candidate key. Are you able to get all the attributes, ma, in the closure? 72? Yes. Ma, firstly, AD, okay. Yes, AD is a candidate key. After that, what are the other different candidate keys? I told you find out all the candidate keys. Yes. What about others, Ma? Are you getting it or no? Are you trying it out, all of you? So is the method clear, Ma? How you are finding out the candidate keys? Given a relation and a set of functional dependencies? So see, this way you have to check, Ma. You have to go on checking, that's it. So here the RHS is only D plus D. I'm finding the closure of that. The closure of D is only D, so it's not a candidate key. Then I'm trying different options, combining D with other attributes. So here I've got DA, everything, DB, everything, DE also I've got everything. DC is not giving me all the attributes. So DC is not part of a candidate key. And then I'm checking with other things. So DF, DE I've checked. DE is also DF, sorry. DF is a candidate key. Then I'm going with 3 attributes. The same way I have to go with the other possibilities also. So this way you have to work with finding out the different candidate keys. Sema, the next one you have is the concept of Armstrong's axioms. Armstrong's axioms. So these are the basic set of inference rules which are used for finding out new set of logically implied functional dependency. So whenever you are interested in finding new set of functional dependency, given existing set of functional dependency, then the Armstrong's axioms would be useful. Now, talking about different kinds of Armstrong's axioms, you have got the first one, reflexive axiom or reflexive rule. So if X is a subset of Y, that is X is subset of Y, then Y implies X. If X is a subset of Y, I can blindly say that Y implies X. Here, example, ABC implies AB is absolutely true. That is the reflexive rule. Already we have covered that while we were discussing about the candidate keys. Okay. Now, next is the second one is augmentation rule or addition rule. So if at all we have a functional dependency X implies Y, which holds good, then for any attribute Z, we have XZ implies YZ. Since X implies Y is true, we can add an attribute on both the sides of the dependency. So this is addition rule. So whenever you say SID implies SName, I can say X SID will imply X SName. So you're just trying to add certain attributes on both the LHS and RHS of the functional dependency. That is the concept of your augmentation rule. So this would be used while you're working with your finding out keys, all that stuff. Already I've used the reflexive property. So the next one is transitive rule. Transitive, all of you know. I can clearly figure out a new FD given two FDs which are dependent. X implies Y, Y implies Z, then I've got X implies Z. X implies Y, Y implies Z, then I've got X implies Z. Now, union rule is you're just trying to combine two FDs. So if I've got X implies Y and X implies Z, then I can say that X implies YZ. X implies YZ. So see, if X implies Y and X implies Z are two functional dependency, then the union rule says that we can combine both these FDs because the LHS is same in both the cases. The LHS is same in both the cases. That is the reason I'm writing X implies YZ. Okay. Next, you have got something called as productive rule or decomposition. It is quite opposite to that of your union rule. So there we had X implies Y, X implies Z. We combine that, and here if at all we have X implies YZ, then we can say that X implies Y and X implies Z. So if we have X implies YZ, then the productive rule says that X implies Y and X implies Z. And please be cautious that you cannot use the productive rule for the LHS. If at all it's the same case, in the same case, I write XY implies Z. If at all I've got a FD called XY implies Z, you cannot write it as X implies Z and Y implies Z. It's only for the right side. X implies YZ gives me X implies Y and X implies Z. Okay. And the last one you have got pseudo transitive rule. We have X implies Y and YZ implies W. We have X implies Y and YZ implies W. Then what we can do is we can replace this Y by X because If at all I've got the value of x, I can determine the value of y. And here I'm using y. So this y can be replaced by x. Instead of yz implies w, I can write xz implies w. If at all I have got something called x implies y to hold good. So this is the different Armstrong axioms that are existing, which can be used while you're working with the previous concept. You have any questions, Ma? You have any questions? Just go through the PPTs for 2 minutes. Go through the PPTs for 2 minutes, Ma, all of you. I hope it's clear, ma. Okay, the next important topic is the concept of normalization. See, I'll just define what you mean by normalization. It is a systematic approach of decomposing tables. Normalization is a systematic approach of decomposing tables in order to eliminate data redundancies and the undesirable characteristics such as insertion, updation, and deletion anomalies. It is a multi-step process that puts data into tabular form and removing duplicates from the relational tables. So this is the definition of your normalization. So what do you mean by decomposition is you are breaking up a single table into multiple tables. So you are breaking up a single table into multiple tables so that you eliminate the concept of insert, delete, update anomalies, and you are trying to reduce redundancy along with inconsistent data. So if at all you are trying to eliminate redundancy, indirectly you can say that you are trying to reduce the or not trying to reduce, you are just trying to increase the consistency of the data by reducing the redundancy. Okay, so see, in a database, it breaks the table into multiple tables. That is the concept of decomposition. Decomposition is the process wherein you are breaking a bigger table into smaller tables. If the relation does not have proper decomposition, then it may lead to problems like loss of information. So whenever you are trying to break table into multiple tables, you have to see that relationship exists between them so that there is no loss of information. Okay, so there is no loss of information, right? And I've clearly told you, normalization is a systematic approach in the sense that a normalization is a step-by-step process wherein you're trying to reduce or minimize the concept of data redundancy from a table, and along with data redundancy, it also eliminates the concept of different kinds of anomalies that are existing. So whenever you're talking about normalization, it is used to divide a larger table into smaller tables, and links them using relationships. That is what I've told you. If at all there is no relationship, again, there would be a huge amount of data redundancy that is existing. And the most commonly used normal forms are first normal form. Briefly, we say that as 1NF. Then you have 2NF, which is second normal form. Then third normal form, 3NF. And for industry point of view, we are going to work with these three normal forms, and at the most BCNF. So if at all you are able to normalize the database until the third normal form, it is more than enough. Sometimes you might go to BCNF, which is Boyce Codd normal form, which is stated as Boyce Codd normal form, which is a stronger version of your third normal form. Then you have 4NF, which stands for fourth normal form, and lastly, fifth normal form, 5NF. So these are the different kinds of normal forms, what you're going to study. And once you are done with the normal forms, that is the end of your third unit. That would be the end of your third unit. Okay. What is first normal form? What are the examples of your first normal form? We'll be working with in the next class. So today you'll be working with activities. If at all you have any questions, you can just raise your questions in the chat. All of you, do you have any questions, in